Amazing truth revealed, wealthy man's sick act backfires, humble maid exposes unexpected secret, the sun barely peeked through the clouds over Willow Creek, but the day was already heavy with potential danger. Amelia, a humble maid in this glimmering town of gated mansions, felt the tight pull of a day unlike any other. After years of pouring herself into 2 jobs while caring for her ailing mother, uncertainty gnawed at her as she approached the estate of Richard Hawthorne. For all his riches and respectability, whispers of dark deeds buzzed around the community. She was determined to stay focused, reminding herself that loyalty to family and personal dignity were her guiding lights, but the weight of hidden truths pressed on her. As she dusted the grand piano in the living room, a sense of unease mingled with curiosity. What lay behind the polished surfaces of this opulent life? The thrill of discovery faded into discomfort when her eyes rested on an ornate bookshelf. She hesitated, breathing in the distinct scent of old paper and secrets. Could she afford to unravel what waited in the shadows? Clutching the duster tightly, she felt the pull of responsibility. Even the risk of losing her job paled in comparison to the chance she might uncover something significant. Suddenly, a soft creak betrayed the shift of a panel behind the shelf. Heart racing, she discovered a small hidden room filled with folders illuminating papers that revealed Richard's illicit dealings, carelessly spilling out the exploitation of families like hers. Panic surged as she wrestled with the magnitude of her find. Could she keep this secret? An idea of what could happen if she confronted Richard twisted her stomach with dread. The man who stood as a pillar of the town could ruin her. In an instant, she felt small and vulnerable, a mere maid among the wealthy elite. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The more she thought about Richard, the more her resolve wavered. She felt fragmented, torn between revealing the truth or protecting her fragile existence. The concept of loyalty dangled precariously over her like a thin thread, binding her to her family, yet despising the thought of turning a blind eye to injustice. Would her staunch morals crush them, or would they give her the strength to step into the light? That evening was restless, and as each hour passed, her anxiety tightened around her chest. She could barely sleep, thoughts swirling around the injustice that cloaked her world. What if he framed her? It wouldn't be a stretch. As she imagined her life crumbling before a town she had loved, a flickering image of her mother came to mind, her fading smile urging her forward, instilling a fierce fire of integrity within Amelia. As she prepared her speech for the public meeting at the town hall, a pulse of determined bravery rose from deep within. Quietly, she held the knowledge of a family legacy, unbroken, threading through generations, a lineage of honor that could embolden her now more than ever. Standing before the microphone, every skeptical gaze weighing heavily on her, Amelia took a deep breath, fighting against the adrenaline coursing through her system. Could she expose Richard's deceit? Would justice triumph here, in the furnace of doubt? The air buzzed with tension as she opened her mouth, the future of her life, perhaps even her family's legacy, resting in what she was about to reveal. As Amelia stood before the microphone, the silence morphed into a suffocating weight. The murmurs of the gathered townsfolk faded into a dull roar, her heart pounding like the frantic beating of a caged bird. This was her moment, a convergence of years of struggle, desperation for her family, and the fire of integrity that fought to illuminate the shadows of deception. With trembling hands resting on the sleek wood of the microphone stand, the enormity of her decision pressed down on her. The room felt charged, as if every pair of eyes was waiting for her to either soar or crash. She could feel the burning glances from the back, a mixture of skepticism from those who supported Richard and anticipation from others who might yearn for the truth. What do I say? She wondered momentarily, and this thought ignited a flicker of doubt that threatened to consume her resolve. The hidden folders flashed into her mind, crisp pages revealing betrayal and greed masquerading as charity. Richard had painted himself as a benefactor of the community while hiding a facade of ruin behind lavish parties and grand donations. Amelia swallowed hard, feeling the knot tighten in her throat. Would calling out his injustices mean the end for both of them, or could it forge a new beginning? Clearing her throat, she took a deep breath, summoning the strength of generations past. Good evening. I stand here not just as a maid, but as a member of this community. I've seen the dark veins of greed run through the portrait of prosperity, she began. The sound of her own voice surprised her, steady and clear, a revelation echoing within. As Richard's name left her lips, a wave of adrenaline surged through her veins. An involuntary shiver ran down her spine as she sensed Richard's shifting form at the back of the room, his eyes narrowing in skepticism and fury. The air crackled with tension, turning the moment into a crucible where her very character would be tested. Richard Hawthorne has used his wealth to exploit the vulnerable, she declared, feeling the momentum of her words. I hold evidence of his actions against families like mine. Actions that have ripped apart lives for profit. The room erupted into whispers, gasps rising as the shockwaves of her truth rippled through the audience. She could see fear etched on familiar faces, the realization that their comfortable lives might be built upon the ruins of others, but her courage felt like a beacon in the dark. With each word, Amelia felt the cloak of her past begin to shed, offering clarity and purpose. I don't want this for my family anymore. I don't want anyone's family to suffer because of a man who thinks he is untouchable. We can't allow this to continue. Yet, what seemed like bravery began to warp into vulnerability. Inside, her resolve flickered, a faint light battling discouragement. The voices in her head echoed, warning her about potential repercussions. What if Richard retaliated? What if everything fell apart? Then, as if drawn by her fear, Richard stepped forward, a shadow casting doubt across her final stand. Are these wild claims backed by facts or simply desperation? He challenged, his voice smooth as silk, draped in condescension. His eyes bore into hers with an intensity that felt almost suffocating. A maid claiming injustice? How utterly amusing. In that instant, a heat ignited in Amelia. Disgust knotted her stomach at the sight of his smug arrogance. It's true, and it's time you answered for it, she replied, the conviction surprising even herself. It was a powerful moment where she felt indeed like a warrior, vulnerable yet resolute, but as the atmosphere thickened with tension, Amelia realized that she had stepped into a dangerous game, one that required more than just courage. Armed with the knowledge of Richard's wrongdoings, could she weave a strategy that would not only expose him but protect herself and her mother from the fallout? As the attention in the room crystallized on her, chasing the edges of fear and courage, Amelia took a slow, deep breath, preparing to face the storm she had unleashed. The time had come to confront not only Richard but, unwillingly, parts of herself she had long buried in the shadows. The next question vibrated in the air, both unasked and palpably present. Was she ready for the battle that lay ahead? The stakes had shifted, and her fight for truth wanted a voice, demanding a plan. As she locked eyes with Richard, the answer hung unbidden between them, heavy with implication. Would she rise to the occasion or retreat into the safety of silence? The electrifying tension hung thick in the air, punctuated only by the hushed whispers of the audience. Amelia's gaze remained steadfast on Richard, yet beneath her exterior strength, a maelstrom of uncertainty raged. The enormity of her claims began to settle within her, a weight that both liberated and burdened her in equal measure. Just how deep did Richard's machinations run? More importantly, how much danger had she just willingly stepped into? In that moment, she felt an awakening of sorts, a realization that she was no longer just a maid wielding truths like weapons but a woman prepared to reclaim her own narrative. Perhaps it was time to lean into the clear path before her, one marked not merely by the shadows of her past but with the burgeoning light of her courage. As Richard prepared to respond, Amelia sifted through her thoughts, formulating a plan within the chaotic tempo of her heart. She could not simply confront him, she needed to be strategic, to transform her passion for justice into a blueprint of resolve. Seeing the skepticism in the audience reminded her that standing alone would not suffice, she needed allies or at least to sway the hearts of those who had doubted her. Richard, she started, her voice revving with a newfound fire, what happens when the truth is illuminated? Every deceitful stitch you've woven in the fabric of this community will unravel. The weight of her words sank into the silence, reverberating off the walls like a call to arms. A few heads nodded in agreement, while others remained rock solid, still clinging to their denial. I worked for you, she continued, cooking and cleaning while your true colors faded behind the veneer of philanthropy. You think that the smiles you give at your extravagant gatherings justify the broken homes you've left in your wake. Yet, I know the sharp edges of reality you try to hide. You think I'm here just to deliver wild claims? She felt a swell of empowerment, pushing her hint of fear aside. I've always known more than you give me credit for. Richard laughed, a hollow sound that reverberated across the room. And what exactly do you think you can expose, Amelia? I've researched, she interrupted, cutting him off with the steel of her words, inviting eyes from every corner of the room to fall upon her. Every company linked to your name. Every account where your investments lie. You see, I'm not just a maid, I'm resourceful. I've gathered evidence, and I refuse to let it silence me. If I need to take this battle to court, I will. The words felt foreign yet thrilling to speak her mind rather than hide it. The crowd stirred, she could feel a palpable shift, as some members of the assembly began to rally their attention to her. For the first time, she glimpsed hope mingling within the fear that had so long gripped her heart. However, Richard's icy demeanor didn't melt. You'd risk your meager livelihood for this? You'll be crushed under the weight of what you've started. Amelia's heart raced, but the doubt she once felt morphed into an unexpected clarity. To remain silent would mean complicity. I refuse to be another cog in your machine. With every word, she disentangled herself further from the shackles of fear, conviction spiraling out to draw in those around her. As she gazed into the crowd, she spotted familiar faces. Were they beginning to align with her cause? Or were they merely pretending to be swayed? It was now or never. This could be her truth, her moment and her movement, or a hollow retreat into silence, but beneath triumph lay a new anxiety. What if, despite her best intentions, she would awaken even deeper evils? What if her exposure unleashed forces that would retaliate against her family? The stakes had suddenly escalated, and the crowd buzzed with sharp intakes of breath, waiting. Amelia squared her shoulders, grounding herself in the realization she no longer stood alone. She had set the wheels in motion, yet the genuine test of her resolve loomed. How could she navigate the perilous terrain ahead? Could she now find others willing to take this fight alongside her? The answer lingered, a bold question wrapped in uncertainty. Would they stand for justice or cower in fear? Amelia stared at Richard, her enemy but also a reflection of the conflict within herself. The moment demanded everything from her strength, her courage, and her unyielding trust in the truth. If she could keep her focus sharp, she might carve a path not only for herself but whatever lay ahead for those who needed her stand. In that charged silence, one thought crystallized her resolve: could her courage trigger a rebellion strong enough to confront Richard's power? The next chapter awaited her with bated breath, ready to unfurl. Amelia's heart drummed violently in her chest, each beat a reminder of the stakes entwined with her resolve. The crowd swayed between intrigue and skepticism, and she sought to snatch that thread of attention, clutching it tightly like a lifeline. Richard's mocking smile only fueled her determination, transforming her fear into an indignant flame. Amelia, he sneered, leaning into the audience, do you honestly think knowledge alone can topple a man like me? You've stepped onto a battlefield you know nothing about. His arrogance rippled through the room, reverberating in the minds of those who stood on the fringes. Yet, his words did not scuttle her resolve. Instead, they solidified her understanding of the fight ahead. Knowledge, indeed, was her weapon, and Richard was underestimating just how much she possessed. Knowledge is just the start, Richard, she declared, her tone now steady and unwavering. It's the courage to act upon it that truly counts. I'm not seeking your approval, I'm reclaiming my story and those you've neglected. As she spoke, an electric current seemed to thrash through her veins. With every syllable, she envisioned the implications of her words not merely as an exposé of Richard, but as a rallying cry for others who had suffered in silence. Would they step forward and join her, or fall back into apathy? Eyes aplenty flickered among those present, assessing, weighing the scale of truth against the facade spun by wealth and influence. She could feel the tension tugging at previous alliances, and the audience began to shift ever so slightly. It was a delicate dance between support and safety, and she felt the dance floor beneath her feet. Many of you have turned a blind eye to the consequences of his actions, Amelia continued, her voice rising with authority. You've indulged in the comforts he provides while ignoring the pain imposed on the vulnerable. But it ends today. I have documentation, witness statements, and records of his deceit. A murmur cascaded through the crowd, rippling like an incoming tide. She seized that moment, planting her words like stakes in the ground. Each statement entwined their disbelief and curiosity into something akin to solidarity. Yet, shadows loomed in the back of her mind, whispering doubts. Should she truly draw others into this storm? The thought thrived alongside the self-doubt that had haunted her, reminding her of the potential repercussions. What if Richard retaliated against those who supported her? Am I standing alone? She questioned, scanning the crowd for signs of allies. Will you continue to sit idly while I expose his facade? Or do you have the courage to stand with me, to disclose your own truths and wrestle this power from his grasp? Suddenly, a voice broke through the heavy air, an older gentleman from the congregation, someone who had previously held high standings in the community. I've seen too much damage done by his greed, Amelia. You're not alone. We stand with you. The stakes surged higher, vibrating through Amelia's core. Could it be possible that Richard's reign was beginning to fray at the edges? She maintained her composure, yet beneath the surface, a swarm of excitement intertwined with fear brewed fiercely. Still, the looming specter of retaliation hung above her head like a darkened cloud, threatening to unleash its fury on anyone who dared to challenge the status quo. Then we fight together, Amelia shouted, emboldened by the unexpected support. Let truth be our battle cry. Let us expose the lies that bind us. The energy shifted palpably, growing infectious. Yet, the question burned bright within her: had she truly rallied enough support, or were they merely swayed by adrenaline? Richard's face morphed from mockery to ferocity, his brow tightening as he realized the potential unraveling of his carefully crafted reputation. You think you know how this will end, Amelia? You have no idea the consequences of what you're invoking. I'll find out, she challenged back, her voice resolute, and in doing so, I'll reveal more than just your secrets. I'll unveil the true nature of justice. With renewed conviction, she resolved to weave together evidence that could withstand his cold threats. Determined to gather the courage and alliances she desperately needed, Amelia's mind forecasted the path ahead. The challenge laid before her was monumental, but she felt the stirrings of her own potential awakening. However, as the crowd swirled around her in newfound energy, a chilling realization crept in: what if there were deeper forces at play than Richard alone? The stakes were rising, and she now knew that every ally could harbor secrets of their own. Fueled by both fear and resolve, Amelia steeled herself for what awaited beyond the fragile alliance they had formed. What secrets would be unveiled even from within her newfound allies? The reckoning was only just beginning, and the truth, once ignited, would spread with a ferocity she could barely anticipate. Would her burgeoning movement uncover more than she bargained for, leading to revelations that could shake her foundation even further? The reckoning awaited her with bated breath, ready to unveil unexpected truths. Amelia stepped off the makeshift podium, heart racing not just from the adrenaline but from the weight of the enormity of her choices. In that moment, she experienced a clarity she'd never felt before. Her outcry was not just a defense of the oppressed but an invocation of her own latent strength. Yet that clarity brought with it an avalanche of questions flooding her mind. Could she leverage this moment into a tangible movement, or would it spiral into chaos? The crowd's reaction lingered in her thoughts as she scanned the room, seeking signs of resolve mirrored in her own. Was the gentleman's declaration of support genuine, or merely an act of defiance against Richard's power? Doubts gnawed at her, but she couldn't afford hesitation now. The collective energy surrounding her was like a tide threatening to recede. She needed to ride it out or risk losing everything. Amelia. A voice called, snapping her from her reverie. It was Sarah, a colleague who had witnessed Richard's menacing schemes firsthand. Can we talk? Sarah's eyes brimmed with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Amelia understood that look. It was the look of someone torn between loyalty and a desperate need for justice. Of course, Amelia replied, ushering Sarah to a quieter corner, away from the cacophony of conflicting emotions and allegiances. As they eased into an almost conspiratorial vibe, the questions blossomed inside Amelia. You were there tonight. What do you think? Do you believe everyone who cheered felt as strongly as I do? Sarah hesitated, biting her lip. Honestly, I think some were just caught up in the moment. They admire your courage, but fear is a powerful force too. This could backfire on all of us. The tension in the air felt thicker than ever. Amelia had encountered this reality before: the chasm between those who had tasted the bitterness of oppression and those whose lives remained untouched. It was time to strengthen the bridge. But if we stay silent, we just allow the cycle to continue? We owe it to ourselves and everyone who is suffering to confront this now, she asserted, the weight of her resolve casting off the lingering doubts. Sarah nodded slowly, but her eyes clouded with unease. What if Richard retaliates? What if he targets people like me, people who merely stood by you tonight? Can we afford that risk? Amelia's heart sank, but fury ignited within her, a determination that came from recognizing her own position of privilege in advocating for the voiceless. This wasn't just her battle, it was about the sacrifices that needed to be made. I can't pretend I have all the answers. But what I do know is that every moment we wait costs us more. We need to prepare ourselves to gather evidence and expose his networks before they can react. As they exchanged ideas for a strategy, a surge of unexpected conviction settled over Amelia. She could feel her inadequacies want to creep back in, a familiar fear. But the more she dissected the risks, the clearer her resolve became. A plan needed to reveal Richard not just as a tyrant but as part of a larger ecosystem of deceit, yet the looming question remained, would she become the very thing she sought to dethrone? The risk of becoming power-hungry lurked, taunting her with the possibility of betrayal from those once loyal to her cause. Freedom could morph into a new prison if allies turned adversarial. As Amelia refined her thoughts into actionable steps, she understood that these revelations were a double-edged sword. With each layer of truth she uncovered, she risked exposing elements of herself that she scarcely understood. Amelia, Sarah interrupted her thoughts, if we're doing this, I want in. I may not have the documentation you do, but I have stories, raw accounts of what he did. That's powerful too. Yes, it is. We need to unite our narratives. Your testimony can illuminate the cracks in his foundation, Amelia replied, invigorated by the collaboration. However, anxiety remained nestled in Amelia's gut. Were they indeed fighting to unearth truth or merely stepping into a trap laid by hidden agendas? The sense of resolve mingled with caution as she contemplated alliances, each with its secrets and potential outcomes. What would it mean to unmask Richard completely? The final unveiling of his deception could change everything, not only for the community but also for her own self-image. Could she emerge unscathed, or would ambition morph into strife? As she stared into Sarah's determined eyes, Amelia felt the collective thrill of potential ignite within her, a promise that the reckoning had only just begun. Yet, as possibilities spiraled into realities, the shadows began to expand, hinting that not every ally would remain steadfast as they delved deeper into uncharted territories. The moment of decision loomed: would she pursue the truth and risk losing everything, or play it safe and cower in the confines of fear? The choice lay before her, trembling with the weight of the unknown consequences woven into its fabric. In the dim light of the cafe, Amelia pushed her half-empty cup of coffee away, mind racing as she stared at the condensation collecting on the side. Each droplet seemed to mirror her thoughts, pooling into illusions of clarity that slipped away the moment she tried to grasp them. Sarah's declaration to join her effort hung between them, charged with the weight of uncertainty. They had delved into a precipice, teetering on the edge of commitment or retreat. "Okay, we need a timeline," Amelia began, voice firmer than her heart felt. "Setting up the groundwork for this will require careful planning. We shouldn't trigger Richard until we've gathered enough evidence to make a real impact." "Agreed, but what about the others?" Sarah asked, concern etching her features. "We're not the only ones affected. Others might want to join, but then we risk exposing ourselves too soon." Amelia nodded, acutely aware that trust was as fragile as glass. She envisioned gathering essential allies, people willing to confront their fears, yet the specter of betrayal loomed. "What if we limit our circle initially? Just a few people we can count on. We can expand later, once we have a stronger foundation." "Smart," Sarah replied, her enthusiasm almost distracting Amelia from the nagging doubt chirping in her mind. "But who do we trust? Every decision carries weight. If we make a wrong choice, let us focus on what we know, rather than dwelling on possibilities," Amelia said, attempting to inject patience into the air. "For now, we seek stories, personal accounts that are irrefutable. We must create a narrative rooted in truth. We can weave through the accusations that Richard could wield against us." As they brainstormed, Amelia began to map out potential contacts in her mind. Each name stirred a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, amplifying the stakes with every story she considered. But with the potential to bring down a monster came the responsibility of their actions. What if the very stories they sought to expose turned against them? What if the walls they tried to erect crumbled before they could finish building them? "Tell me about Richard," Amelia urged, her gaze steady upon Sarah. "What do you really know?" The question brought moments of silence, heavy and contemplative. Sarah's gaze drifted towards the ground, her fingers twirling a napkin. "He's not just a businessman. He has ties to influential people who thrive on power, not just money. His philanthropic face is a mask, a facade crafted to obscure an agenda. The moment anyone challenges him, he retaliates, and hard." Amelia felt pieces of a puzzle falling into place, adrenaline rushing as her mind clicked through possibilities. "This isn't just about one person," she mused aloud. "It's about revealing a network. A broad web that connects those who enable him." "Yes, but that could mean facing people who won't hesitate to protect their interests, even if that means silencing us." The gravity of Sarah's words weighed like lead in Amelia's stomach. "I know. But if we gather stories, real accounts from people he's harmed, those testimonies will need validation. We must prepare for pushback. Are we willing to go that far? I mean, is this all worth the risk?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly, vulnerability breaking through her resolve. Amelia hesitated, recalling the moment she stood on that podium, addressing the crowd. The echo of her words rippling through the air was not merely a call to action, it was a prompt for her own spirit. "Yes, it's worth the risk. The risk of standing still is perilous too. If we don't act now, who will?" The urgency clashed within her, an unrelenting fire mixed with the dread of the inevitable fallout. Decision-making had never been so fraught with conflicting emotions, the path ahead uncertain yet impossible to ignore. The prospect of becoming entrenched in a battle stained with deception and danger gnawed at her. Was she really prepared for the personal cost? As they leaned over their scattered notes, an overwhelming tension filled the tiny space. Each new idea felt electric, yet the fear of failure crackled privately within Amelia. If Richard retaliated, would her fight turn into an unwelcome descent into chaos? The cafe door swung open, and Amelia turned, a sharp intake of breath catching in her throat. A familiar figure stepped inside, someone she never expected to see. It was a face from her past, someone who could either amplify her resolve or drown her in unexpected complications. As the figure approached, the reality hit her like a wave crashing against a shore. Would this encounter illuminate her path forward, or would it deepen the murky waters of her already tumultuous mission? Amelia felt the ground shift beneath her feet as she braced for whatever twist fate had in store. Amelia's heart raced, the unmistakable flutter of anxiety colliding with a surge of recognition as the figure drew closer. Sam. A twist of fate she hadn't anticipated. They had parted ways years ago, their paths diverging under the weight of ambition and unspoken regret. Seeing him now, with an expression that oscillated between surprise and guarded curiosity, brought back memories she'd long since filed away. Amelia, he greeted, his voice cutting through the layers of tension thickening the café air. I didn't expect to find you here. I can say the same, she replied, striving to maintain composure while her mind reeled with possibilities. The implications of his presence rippled outward, a rapid cascade of potential futures swirling around them. Mind if I join you? Sam gestured towards the empty chair at their table. It was a question, but the way he leaned slightly and reflected an urgency beneath the casual approach. Amelia glanced at Sarah, whose eyes flared with curiosity and a hint of skepticism. They had a mission, and she needed to tread carefully. Sure, she finally said, the words spilling from her lips without much contemplation. As Sam settled in, the familiarity was both comforting and disorienting. His eyes searched Amelia's, seeking answers to questions unsaid. But she had no time for nostalgia, the urgency of their cause clung to her like a second skin. What's got you two so deep in thought? He inquired, looking from Amelia to Sarah, whose expression indicated she was struggling to mask her own thoughts. We're working on something important, Amelia replied, her tone deliberate. She felt a sudden spark of realization this was a pivotal moment. Sam had always been resourceful, an asset in the chaotic world of corporate maneuvering. Could he provide a different perspective, or even assistance, in their plan? Important? Sam's brow raised, skepticism threatening to overshadow his intrigue. What kind of important? Amelia took a deep breath, debating how much to share. However, the gravity of their task outweighed discretion. We're gathering evidence against Richard and uncovering the truth about his operations. It's bigger than just him. It's about a network that needs to be exposed. Richard? You think you can take him down? Sam's tone turned serious, skepticism shifting toward a guarded confrontation laced with concern. Not just him. It's about the people who support him and benefit from his facade, she replied, a deep determination forming with each word. We're not going into this blindly. Sounds risky, he countered, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. What's your plan? This isn't a game, Amelia. He won't play nice if you threaten his empire. The truth of his words stung. The calculated risk weighed heavier now, a reminder that failure was more than a mere misstep, it could lead to ruin and retaliation. We're starting small, she confessed, gathering stories from those affected people who faced his wrath. Each story is a thread, together, they weave an undeniable narrative of his actions. Sam's expression softened, contemplation mingling with intrigue. You're not alone. No, Amelia replied, finding a fresh surge of strength from the camaraderie she shared with Sarah. We're building a team. We just need the right allies. And you think I could be one of them? He asked, tilting his head slightly, a trace of vulnerability shimmering in his eyes. The question startled her, forcing Amelia to reconsider the narrative looping in her mind. Sam had once stepped back from ambition to pursue stability. What if he had transformed in ways she couldn't yet see? Can I count on you, Sam? Can you bring more people like you who care enough to fight against the corruption? He appeared mulling over her request, weighing risks against potential allies. If this is as serious as you say, then I can help. But we must go in prepared. Richard is blind to loyalty. If he thinks he is at risk, he'll tear down anyone who gets in his way. The tension in Amelia's chest lifted slightly. Together, they could harness the very spirit of resilience that shaped her mission. Their shared history could serve as powerful inspiration to guide her forward. Then let us make a plan. The decisiveness in Amelia's voice cut through doubt, a reminder that resolve must be embraced, not feared. As they began to formulate strategies, a rush of exhilaration coursed through her, pushing her mind to contemplate not merely the mission ahead but also the possibility of rekindling what was lost with Sam. But was this new partnership destined for greatness or catastrophe? The cafe's atmosphere seemed to change as they huddled around the table, the flicker of hope taking root. Yet the shadow of Richard's wrath loomed, promising a confrontation that could shift everything once again. As the gravity of their task settled, Amelia couldn't shake the question that now clung to her thoughts: would navigating the perilous waters ahead solidify her development as a leader, or would it betray her core values? With a new ally at her side, had she inadvertently widened the scope of their battle? Amelia leaned in, fueled by a sense of purpose that had long been absent from her life. The weight of responsibility wrapped around her like a cloak, pulling her deeper into the conversation with Sam. They were on the precipice of something monumental, and she could feel it in her bones. "Let us break down our first steps," she suggested, an edge of excitement creeping into her words. "What we need is a clear narrative, something we can present to people who might join our cause." Sam nodded thoughtfully, the skepticism from earlier slowly melting away. "If you can create a compelling story, it will connect with others. But we need solid evidence, a compelling story won't stand without it." Amelia's mind raced. She had always been skilled at unearthing narratives, piecing together threads of truth from shattered lives. Sarah's hand moved deftly across her notebook, capturing their plans as they brainstormed. "We can start by reaching out to the employees at his company," Amelia said, her voice unwavering. "They may not trust us at first, but if we approach them as allies, not enemies, we could gather their experiences. Their insights will be our foundation." "But it's risky," Sam interjected. "If Richard finds out, he won't hesitate to retaliate against the weak. We have to tread carefully." The reminder hung in the air like a cloud, heavy and foreboding. Amelia could almost feel the eyes of Richard's empire bearing down on her. They had to be stealthy, and that meant blending in, not alerting the predator stalking them. "Then we move slowly, like shadows. We gather intelligence first, discreet, unthreatening conversations, and see if there's a pattern without exposing ourselves." Sarah peered up from her notes, admiration radiating from her, yet a hint of worry still etched on her face. "And if we find someone willing to speak up? Someone who has been deeply affected?" Amelia paused, the question igniting her previous doubts. "Then we ensure they understand the risks. This isn't just about us. It's about changing an entire system, but we can't do it carelessly. Their safety comes first." Meeting Sam's gaze, she sensed a silent agreement brewing between them. His previous caution had transformed into something more concrete, a shared commitment, a united front determined to unravel the web of deceit. "Okay," Sam said slowly, "but what if we discover something worse than we expect?" His voice dropped, a layer of seriousness weaving into his words. "What if that puts us directly in Richard's sights?" The notion set off a chain reaction of thoughts within Amelia. She had been driven by a singular focus, but her once clear vision now began to cloud. What might she be exposing, not just for herself, but for those who would aid her? She envisioned the faces of potential allies and shaken survivors. Those who had suffered. A cold shiver crept down her spine. "We prepare for that scenario as well," Amelia finally said, her voice steady, but the ache of possibility coiling around her. "If we have to face the worst, we do it fiercely and strategically. I need to be ready to confront whatever truths come to light." Sam seemed to reconsider his approach, acknowledging the gravity of the situation inherent in the potential truth they sought. "Then we're both committed. But you need to lead, it's your mission, after all," he said, offering her a small smile that held both encouragement and expectation. Leadership was a mantle she had worn before, yet this time felt different. The responsibility wasn't solely professional, it was deeply personal. Amelia concentrated on the pulse of her heart, each beat reverberating with intent. Then it settled, she declared, emboldened by the collective determination swirling in the air. "We'll meet again to discuss our findings and potential contacts." She stood, ready to solidify their bond with action. As they prepared to leave, a voice in her head whispered urgent reminders: her vision, her ambition. But would it be enough to hold on to integrity while pursuing justice? The café's atmosphere buzzed around her, but Amelia felt isolated in her thoughts. The tension of the unknown loomed larger than ever before. As they stepped out into the bustling streets, her heart quickened with anticipation. An echoed reminder coursed through her: the deeper the dive into Richard's murky world, the more perilous the waters could become. With her nascent team excited yet anxious, Amelia couldn't help but ponder the imminent clash that awaited them. Would pursuing this journey reveal her true strength, or would it unravel the very fabric of her values? What would it cost to confront the darkness lurking in the shadows? The city felt alive with potential and threat, each step taking her closer to decisions that could change everything. And amidst all of it, a singular thought lingered: would she have the courage to face Richard when the moment came, or would the shadows of her past pull her under before she could surface? Amelia sat at her kitchen table, a stack of reports spread out before her, the glow of the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. The blaring sound of her phone jolted her from her thoughts. It was Sam, checking in as promised. His voice crackled through the speaker, bursting with enthusiasm. "Have you started on the narrative yet?" he asked, a hint of excitement cutting through the gruffness of his tone. "I'm working on it," she replied, attempting to mask the slight tremor in her voice. The weight of their mission began to settle in her chest. "But I need to ensure each piece we present carries weight. It's not just about a story, it's about lives impacted." Reshaping her narrative was no small feat. It demanded more than just facts, it required an emotional resonance that could rally support without triggering the full wrath of Richard. As Sam talked through various encounters he had with potential allies, Amelia's mind darted between possibilities. The urge to rush forward battled with an equally strong instinct to remain cautious. "Remember, we're walking a tightrope," Sam warned, noting the flutter of her ideas. "Every word counts." She nodded absently, scribbling notes as he spoke. Yet, the longer she stayed in this whirlpool of thoughts, the more it became evident, she felt unprepared, cornered by the gravity of their undertaking. Could she balance a hopeful narrative with the stark realities of what they faced? After hanging up, Amelia drew in a long breath. The stress was palpable, affecting her clarity of thought. She pushed her papers aside and stepped into her living room, her sanctuary of sorts, a cluttered space filled with old books and fading photographs. She paused before the window, considering how drastically her life had shifted. In the last few weeks, she had tapped into a voice she had suppressed for too long. The fear of stepping into uncharted territory began to ebb, replaced by a determination that flared to life within her. Yet, with every surge of resolve came a shadow of doubt: was this bravery or reckless ambition? That night, she initiated her research, digging into employee testimonials from Richard's company. It was a tedious process, sampling stories from disgruntled employees who had felt silenced, but each account pushed her closer to the heart of her mission. One story in particular caught her attention: a former employee's account of coercive tactics and manipulation. The voice behind the words struck a chord with Amelia. It mirrored the struggles of so many she had encountered in her own life. Empowered, she allowed herself to veer off script, letting her instincts guide her through the melancholy and rage of their experiences. The momentum fueled her creativity. She began crafting a captivating narrative, interlacing facts with poignant testimonials. Through the pall of dread, the cautionary outlines she had laid down now appeared as possibilities waiting to be transformed. The stories had the potential to be more than just words; they could unify their truth and summon change. But beneath the surface of inspiration lurked a question that gnawed at her: would these truths bring light, or would they only kindle Richard's wrath? Days turned into nights, each passing moment growing heavier with uncertainty. Throughout the process, Amelia found herself confronting her deepest fears. What if she failed? What if the very people she aimed to protect became collateral damage? As she prepared for the following day's meeting with Sam and Sarah, Amelia hastily flipped through her notes, catching snippets of her thoughts. A newfound sense of purpose surged within her. Was this the turning point she desperately sought? Was she truly capable of leading this charge, stepping back from the endless cycle of worry, she made a promise to herself: if she was to take on Richard, she wouldn't do so with blind ambition. Instead, she would face the truth of the situation head-on honestly and fearlessly. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the last rays of light disappeared, Amelia turned her gaze towards the city skyline, her resolve crystallizing. Tomorrow would mark a pivotal moment. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts, steeling herself for whatever awaited them. Tomorrow, we confront the shadows, she murmured to herself, a flicker of defiance igniting. How many others were waiting for someone to risk it all, and just before sleep ensued, the thought echoed in her mind: what would she need to uncover to ensure Richard didn't extinguish the flicker of hope? As daylight broke over Willow Creek, a newfound confidence settled in Amelia's bones. The moment she opened her eyes, she reminded herself of the stakes at hand. Today, she would step into the arena where deception and truth collided. Stand tall, she told herself, knowing that her voice carried the weight of countless stories yearning to be heard. The reports she meticulously compiled lay spread across her table, a collection of truths, painful yet powerful, that transcended her identity as merely a maid. Her meeting with Sam and Sarah felt like the turning point, infused with urgency. They would strategize, intent on converting their collected narratives into a unified stand against Richard Hawthorne's tyranny. As she walked toward the cafe where they agreed to meet, her heart filled with purpose, every step echoing a promise of unrelenting resilience. No longer was she invoking the timid footsteps of a subordinate. Instead, she strode like a leader ready to confront the power that sought to silence her and those she sought to empower. Arriving at the cafe, she spotted Sam and Sarah deep in discussion, their faces lit with determination. The sight cemented her belief: she was not alone in this battle. "I've gathered more testimonials," Amelia declared, a renewed vigor in her voice. "We can weave them into a narrative that highlights the human cost of Richard's greed. Each story will reveal the heart of our fight." As they exchanged ideas, Amelia sensed the shift in dynamics. Their camaraderie fortified the foundation of their mission. "The more people we involve, the stronger our case becomes," Sam contributed, drawing closer to the plan. "We need a clear message so that when we present the truth, no one can ignore the impact." Together, they outlined each story's highlights, juxtaposing the personal experiences against Richard's facade of philanthropy. With every sentence penned and each testimony amplified, Amelia felt pieces of her apprehension fall away, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. Crafting this narrative was more than mere documentation, it was an act of communal expression that underscored solidarity in the face of adversity. Days turned into a flurry of activity, a whirlwind of conversations, collected stories, and burgeoning alliances. They reached out discreetly to former employees, victims of Richard's unscrupulous methods. In each narrative, Amelia recognized her own struggles mirrored back to her: the weight of exploitation, the suffocating fear of retaliation, but also the gradual emergence of courage against oppression. Finally, the day arrived when they would present their assembled evidence before the town. Amelia stood in front of an audience of townsfolk, her hands trembling slightly but guided by unwavering resolve. "Today, we stand not only for ourselves but for every voice that has been silenced by greed. Together, we reshape this community's narrative," she proclaimed, her voice resonating with conviction. As she revealed the exposed truths behind Richard's elite empire, Amelia's heart swelled with both fear and elation. The reactions were varied: shock, concern, and an echo of shared experiences reverberated in the air. But perhaps most importantly, a current of solidarity flowed through the audience. At that moment, confronted by Richard's icy glare from the back of the room, Amelia felt a shift deep within herself. She had turned her vulnerability into strength, and with that metamorphosis came recognition not only from others but from herself. She was no longer defined by her circumstance, she had reshaped her identity into one of an advocate of justice, wielding truth as her most potent weapon. Suddenly, a voice rose from the crowd. "We stand with you, Amelia. You've shown us we don't have to hide anymore." The eruption of support brought tears to her eyes, but Amelia stood strong, humbly accepting the triumphant recognition. Her heart beat a rhythm of victory, intertwined with those who stood by her side, emboldened by her fight for justice. Richard, once a looming figure of intimidation, appeared diminished. His power, built on treachery, began to unravel. As the truth spread through the town like wildfire, the faces of the oppressed began to light with hope, a revival ignited by Amelia's courage. In the moments that followed, as the community rallied for change, Amelia understood something profound. Her journey was not solely about exposing Richard, it was about redefining what it meant to belong in her community, to reclaim one's narrative, and to inspire others to stand for their truth. Today marked a significant personal achievement. Amelia stood no longer alone, but as an empowered participant in the unfolding transformation. This victory was hard-earned, a reflection of her evolution from humble maid to a recognized force for change. With the wind of newfound purpose at her back, she realized her mission was only beginning. It was time to pursue the next chapter of her life, paved by the courage she had demonstrated and the bonds she had forged. Determined to remain the advocate her community needed, Amelia felt ready to embrace whatever came next. For now, she had conquered the shadow cast by Richard, yet the light revealed an expansive horizon, crackling with the promise of future victories. In that moment of clarity, Amelia committed to growing this movement, a real change driven by authentic voices, beginning with her own. Act now. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to follow exclusive emotional stories just like Amelia's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement matters. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who should witness this incredible journey. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.